2015's Transformers Robots in Disguise is rivaled only by 2017's Transformers The Last Knight in being the single biggest waste of potential the collected Transformers franchise has to offer. With a diluted tone and worse writing, RID15 disappointed fans of both Transformers and the Aligned continuity, respectively, by failing to match both its cartoon predecessor or even the glorious games before it, instead replicating the worst possible traits of Rescuebots with only a handful of interesting concepts and lovable characters of both the Cybertron games and Prime sprinkled in each season. However, RID15's failure at replicating what Transformers fans loved about previous entries in its universe isn't the worst part of the show. That crown of scrap can instead be given to its treatment of Megatronus Prime, an antagonist whose appearance contradicts everything established in the Covenant of Primus, a novel confirmed to be canon by TFP itself. In case you need a refresher, Megatronus Prime functions simultaneously as the Cybertronian equivalent of Judas Iscariot and the Transformer species as Cain, being among the first 13 Transformers created by Primus, with his treacherous brother manipulating him into murdering his lover, Solus Prime. The Covenant of Primus details his descent into villainy as he fights alongside his siblings against a vengeful Unicron, all the while being treated as a potential threat for his aggressive and chaotic personality by his siblings, with him finding solace in his friendship and later romance with Solus Prime. Megatronus never murdered Solus Prime out of hatred, with him instead committing the unsavory act after being manipulated into fighting her, killing her pet and discharging the Requiem blaster she built for him years earlier directly into her chest, and extinguishing her spark in minutes. Ashamed, Megatronus hid himself in the mountains before being discovered by his brothers and getting forced into attending her funeral, later killing Liege Maximo in revenge and donning the armor Solus forged to banish himself to the farthest reaches of space, dubbing himself the Fallen out of guilt. Go ahead and forget all of that, because RID15 sure did. Instead of the fascinating and tragic backstory Justina Robson wrote for the Fallen's character, RID15 gave us a mustache-twirling supervillain trapped in a pocket universe, leading a pack of renegade Decepticons and constructing a portal that would eventually free him, allowing him to finally pursue his goal of uniting Unicron's Anti-Spark and Cybertron's Allspark to eradicate both planets and the species inhabiting them for the role each supposedly played in his humiliating defeat. What? What the hell does any of this have to do with the events of Primus' Covenant? An easy answer would be to simply say the novel isn't canon to the Aligned continuity, a theory that is straight up wrong by the virtue of its first chapter being damn near retold word for word in Prime. An easier answer would be to say RID15 is a parallel timeline that isn't canon to Prime and its predecessors, a theory I find incredibly uncreative and refuse to acknowledge any further. I have a much simpler and much more interesting theory that ties the two universes that introduced me to Transformers together in the best possible way. The Fallen is a multiversal singularity, meaning every incarnation prior to 2016 is the same character with the same spark inhabiting a new universe following his death in his previous appearance. Despite the Aligned continuity being completely detached from the overall Transformers multiverse before the Darkspark forcefully dragged it kicking and screaming into the amalgamate, it is no exception to this rule, as the majority of its entries premiered before 2016. It is generally agreed upon that RID15 takes place a little over 3 years after Prime, which had a finale that couldn't have taken place any later than 2012 due to a complete lack of holidays or celebrations occurring in the show's 3 seasons, placing RID15's first season sometime in mid to late 2015, months before the Shroud could affect its universe. Now, let me ask you a single question. What was the Fallen's last major appearance in Transformers media before the Aligned continuity? 2009's classic Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, an action-packed piece of work that introduced thousands to the lovely franchise and much better incarnations of the title character. The Bay vs. incarnation of the Fallen is worse than RID15's on account of him being the title villain and showing up for a grand total of 7 minutes, dying pitifully in the battle with Optimus Prime as he's slaughtered like a Mortal Kombat character and left to bleed out in front of the disciple he groomed into becoming a xenophobic, mass-murdering, warmongering tyrant. I'm sure you can tell where I'm going with this. The Fallen scene in Robots in Disguise has to be the Fallen scene in Revenge of the Fallen, due to the former being the direct predecessor of the latter, discounting Shattered Glass. Genuinely take the time to sit down and think about this revelation for a second, and you'll see how much it makes sense. The Fallen shown in Revenge of the Fallen died horrifically, losing half his fingers and his face before having his spark torn out and crushed in front of his pathetic eyes, all because a human of Earth resurrected a Transformer of Cybertron. If you take his status of a multiversal singularity into account, the fallen spark immediately jumped into the aligned continuity following his defeat, with the memories of his tyrant destruction most likely being buried the moment he entered this new reality, only revived following his extended exposure to Unicron, triggering slow descent into madness.